Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Everybody's time is valuable. Is this too loud, right? Okay. Thank you all for attending this afternoon. It's a gorgeous day in our little slice of paradise, and I suspect some folks are probably taking advantage of it out on the golf course or the pickleball court or walking along the beach as they should be. Maybe some folks will watch afterwards online. There's also, we had a little scheduling snafu. There are some other important events taking place around the island right now that people are appropriately at. Right now there's an Our World session that I think is probably just finishing up. It was one of the leaders from MUSC, from the Hollings Cancer Center, and so I know that's very important to everyone, and I hope they were able to ask a lot of good questions and learn a lot, and maybe some of you have come over from that. It's also the Conservancy's Day of Connection. Used to be the Kiawah Conservancy, but I don't know if you've heard, as of today, that's no longer the case. It is the Conservancy of the Sea Islands. They've rebranded and relabeled, so they have a day-long a series of activities, one of which is a gathering on Freshfields Lawn right now, starting right now. But that goes until 6 o'clock or so, so as soon as we wrap up here, I encourage everybody to hightail it over there. I don't know if they have libations and other things. Again, thank you all for joining. So it's about a year ago this time that I did this version of what has been, was intended to be a quarterly series of community forums like this to allow you all to ask whatever questions you want to about what's going on in our community. And I'll do my best to answer those. This version's slightly different than the other quarterly meetings, which is I'll do a little bit of more of a download on some of the things that the town has undertaken over the course of last year, a brief reflection on that, both from an administration standpoint as well as council legislative actions with the support of my fellow council members. What the kind of the highlight is, since this is the state of the town, is the state of the town, I would hope we would all agree, is extraordinarily positive right now. Whether you talk about it from a town administration or legislative standpoint, I think that's less important. But our overall quality of life, we're all blessed to live in this extraordinarily beautiful place. We do have challenges, we do have problems, we do have complaints, but they truly are first world problems. And this really is an extraordinary place. But we need to make sure that we're not taking that for granted. And I want to come back to that theme about some challenges that continue to persist and that we have to collectively address in order to make sure that our little slice of paradise remains what it is. What I want to do is briefly reflect a little bit on before opening up to questions, on the last year, and then kind of outline some strategic priorities looking forward. This is all in many respects a predicate to the meetings next Tuesday and Wednesday, to which you all are welcome, that my fellow council members and I will be holding strategic planning sessions next Tuesday and Wednesday in this room. And those are all-day sessions when we'll go into a lot more depth on some of the issues that I'll just gloss over today. But a year ago at this time, when I first did this kind of the State of the Town presentation, and I don't know if any of you recall this, but it looks like Aaron Slater had circulated a summary. I think it was AI assisted of what I talked about at the time. And I actually went back and pulled that up, and it's actually a fairly useful template for touching upon some of the issues. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet. Just back to the headline. We'll get there. Last year, what I started with was some issues or thoughts about the town's administration, strengthening municipal governance, and enhancing transparency. And I noted that we were committed to an open decision-making processes and ensuring that all major discussions occur in public meetings. I hope we've evidenced that, maybe to a fare thee well. We have rather lengthy council meetings, but it's all out there. You're seeing the sausage making when we're up on the dais each and every meeting. And I'm blessed, I think the community is blessed by extraordinarily hard-working council. And I think you see that when we're up there discussing issues. Everybody rolls up their sleeves, and they've particularly done that on some specific issue areas. We don't always agree. There were a lot of votes where they're not unanimous votes. I've been on the losing side of a couple, but in each and every instance, it's always a very respectful, civil conversation, which I feel very privileged to be part of, along with my fellow colleagues. I also talked about that the town's perspective was going to be a customer-centric one, trying to be very responsive to customer, that is, resident or visitor concerns. We can always do better. I hope that we've lived up to that, but please let us know if we're not, and that are there areas where we can continue to improve. I said that one of the primary objectives over the course of 2025 was strengthening a wide variety of municipal policies dealing with financial oversight, contracts, accounting policies and procedures, ASAR policies and procedures, and I'll touch upon that in a minute. Then I talked a little bit about public safety and emergency preparedness, and noted that we were continuing to look at opportunities to strengthen emergency management, and particularly on the medical side, responsiveness on Kiawah Island, and extraordinary developments in that regard over the last year. First and foremost, we've just talked about that there is an MUSC doctor that's speaking at our World right now, finishing up, but obviously we're all excited about the fact that the new MUSC facility has opened up. And given the fact that we are, an older population here relative to some other communities, and many of us are aging in place, it's a critically important addition to the island. But it's not just that. I want everybody to feel comforted by the fact that, and particularly on a per capita basis, we have an extraordinary number of first responder services on this island. We'll talk about this a little bit more in depth on Tuesday and Wednesday, but between the St. John's Fire District Stations 4 and 6, 4 has a quick response vehicle manned by a paramedic. We've provided additional training. The town has provided additional training to enhance their life support capabilities from EMT, advanced EMT, in some cases paramedic. Same thing with Barrier Island Ocean Rescue. About half of all Barrier Island Ocean Rescue staff, beach patrol, code enforcement, have advanced life support training, and the town has invested in that, upgrading their capabilities. We also have just half mile up the road, the Charleston County EMS station. That used to be dynamically staffed, which meant whatever where resources moved around. We've met with the Charleston County EMS director, and he's pointed out that now moved to a station-based model, so there's a 24/7 EMS ambulance there, just a half mile off the road. And they've entered a half mile up the road. They've entered into a partnership agreement with MUSC, so if that vehicle is in transport into Charleston or elsewhere, the ambulance you see if you drive up to MUSC all the time, that's primary there for transport for somebody that shows up at the emergency department at MUSC, that ambulance vehicle is able to step in and support the Charleston County EMS. So extraordinary upgrades in our overall first responder capabilities on Kiawah Island. Emergency preparedness continues to be a critical function of the town. Under the leadership of the Director of Public Safety, we hold all sorts of exercises, collaborate with all the different first responders in and around the Charleston community. That is, for example, pertains to potential weather events coming over the next few days. Right now, fortunately, we continue to monitor this real time. It looks like the worst of the impacts will stay slightly north and or west of us, so we won't have the heavy icing, but that could change, and we'll be prepared to figure out how best to respond to that. One of the things I touched upon last year was that the intention to resuscitate CERT, and boy has that happened under the leadership of Councilmember Berner. We've got a newly organized, re-energized CERT team. They just had a new exercise with tabletop exercise with St. John's Fire District. So we're trying to do everything we can to enhance public safety on the island. I touched upon infrastructure and public works. Some of this I'll follow up on a little bit more, but one of the things that was identified as strategic priority last year was upgrading our telecommunications infrastructure, particularly cell coverage and moving to 5G. That's been under the leadership of Councilmember Spencer. That's a longer-term project, but we've laid the groundwork for that. He was actually meeting today, was it today or yesterday, with leadership from Crown Castle, moving forward on initially siting a new cell tower on the ocean course. And I think the intention is to invest in new cell tower infrastructure at other locations around the island going forward. That's going to take a while, both of the permitting process and then decommissioning a tower and putting up a new one, but we're moving forward in that regard. There's a host of other things we can touch upon regarding infrastructure in a little bit, and I'll come back to that. Environmental conservation, wildlife protection, I touched upon that. One of the things, I don't know if there are going to be any questions about this, otherwise I'm not going to go into in detail now. At this time last year, we talked about the litigation we had initiated, that was the town, the Conservancy, and KICA, to preserve and protect Captain Sam Spit. As we've discussed publicly, but I can't say a lot more about it than that, is that those there are two matters of litigation that have been conflated in our mediation right now. I remain hopeful that we can resolve those successfully, but please be assured that the one thing that the town is absolutely committed to is protecting and preserving Captain Sam Spit in its natural state and preserving public access to Beachwalker Park and the beachfront areas of Captain Sam Spit. There are a number of development and land use issues we touched upon, including the mediation settlement last year regarding Ocean Pines and Upper Beachwalker. Don't need to belabor that. And then I also, which I'll come back to as well, touched a little bit on the town's finances and budget considerations, and I noted, and this is really an issue I'll come back to, that at that time we had a strong financial position with a financial surplus, basically cash reserves of the amount of $43 million. That's now $50 million. And I want to come back to, what are the things that we might think about utilizing those resources for protecting and investing in our critical infrastructure. So now, just to briefly just highlight some of the things, some of our key legislative accomplishments. We completely revised and repealed and revised the beach management ordinance. The principal reason for doing that was to make sure that we had the regulatory tool set in order to best protect our beachfront, which is our beach and dune system, which is critical not only because that's one of the principal attractions for visitors, but it's the first line of defense against sea level rise and increasing intensity of storms. We repealed and replaced our procurement code. I already talked a little bit about cell towers. We've done a substantial amount of work on our zoning code already, updating and modernizing that, but there's a long way to go. That may be a key priority that we'll talk about on Tuesday and Wednesday. We put in place a new encroachment ordinance. We had never had one before. Anybody that's doing work in the town's public right-of-way needs to get a permit to do that, and that's there to make sure that any work that gets done, if there's any damage done on the town's roads or right-of-way, that the encroaching party is obligated to replace and repair that. We adopted, and this was under the leadership of Planning Commission Chair Joanne Hennessy, who's in the back of the room, and her fellow commission members, the 5-year update, required 5-year update to the comprehensive plan. Number of key recommendations that are going to be the framework for a lot of our discussion as a council next Tuesday and Wednesday. We've adopted a new landscape and tree preservation board, and I'm going to show a couple of images. We'll show some images. I don't think I'll show them, maybe, I can't remember, Neil. Yes, we'll show them now, why that's so important, why perhaps a design review board is very important as well. The town recently adopted that. I know KICA's working on a resolution with regard to a design architectural review control at KICA, And we'll just have to wait and see how that process plays out, and then how we can best coordinate the two regulatory regimes so as to be a most efficient process for everybody on the island. So that's with the extraordinary support and hard work of council members. This is some of the things we've done over the course of the last year. We've tried to do a lot from the town administration standpoint. Next slide. We completely revised our accounting policies and procedures, completely revised and updated our HR policies and procedures. As we just announced, and this was really driven by Dorota Schubert, our finance director, and the chair of our audit committee, council member Farrell, we, for the first time, undertook a separate assessment on internal controls. The council reported out on that at the last meeting. What we haven't yet unveiled, but we've just recently undertaken, is a new reserve study. We'll probably provide the results of that at the upcoming council meeting in a couple of weeks. The purpose of going through that exercise was to understand what are all the town's assets, and what is the cost of replacing all those assets, and what do we need to set aside for ongoing maintenance. And part of the reason for that is to understand what are the potential calls on that $50 million in cash reserves that we have, and do we have more than enough money to satisfy all those potential obligations. The only thing about expanding standing committee outreach, and we've been very fortunate, the community has responded to this, is in the past with a lot of our committees, and it's more the advisory committee, whether it's public safety, environmental resiliency, arts council, and others, less so planning commission and board of zoning appeals and the statutory committees, is the mindset was always, if you wanted to stay on, you got to stay on, and sometimes there would not be any positions published as open. And what we've established now going forward is every position, unless it's a termed position, is up every year. And current members are welcome to apply, but we want to make sure we're reaching out to the community and getting the best and the brightest to serve on behalf of the community. And sometimes new blood, new ideas is a good thing. Next. Yeah, public infrastructure projects. Leisure trail improvements. We did work on both Beachwalker Drive and Kiawah Island Parkway. Landscaping and tree work, everybody's aware of that. There were some complaints that we got, certainly about some of that work, at least on December 29th. Probably well-considered complaints, and needed readjustment on that. But it's interesting, talking to the service provider, Randy Ross, and Rawson Services did that work. He says it was a fun project for him to work on, because he said he's been here several decades, and to his knowledge, there'd never been any work on the town's right-of-way all along Kiawah Island Parkway, Beachwalker Drive, trimming and pruning trees for health, raising the canopy so as to avoid trucks hitting them, as was routinely the case, and enhancing the overall landscape and viewscape, and things like, and it's hard to even imagine what was there before if you're driving towards, just before you get to Old Cedar Lane, if you're going back on the island. You've always been able to look out right and see some beautiful marsh and birds. The same thing existed on the left, but it was just completely overgrown. Now we've opened that up. That's a project that's going to continue. The Civic and Cultural Center addition, we undertook a design competition. Councilmember Berner was working with me and others in the community on that. That's the rendering of the firm that we chose to initiate the project. That initial conceptual work is now underway. They've had to do a lot of survey work, a lot of soil testing, et cetera. There are some issues we've got to work through with regard to wastewater, but our hope is that 2 years from now, and not more than that, we will have this new facility or something like that. So stay tuned. Next slide. So I do want to talk a little bit again about our town's finances, because we are in an extraordinary fortunate position from a financial standpoint as a relatively small town. So we have $50 million in general and restricted fund resources. That's cash. that's earning 3 to 4% right now. I just want to read, this was the latest Municipal Association of South Carolina publication, and I'm going to quote from it, that how much fund balance should the city keep? And this is from the Government Finance Officers Association, fund balance guidelines for the general fund. The guidelines recommended a minimum that general purpose governments, regardless of size, maintain unrestricted budgetary fund balance in their general fund of no less than 2 months of regular fund operating revenues. Our monthly operating revenue is about $800,000 a month. So 2 months is 1.6, 3 months 2.4, and we have 20x that, or 30x that in our overall funds. Our general fund, our unrestricted fund, is still close to $30 million. So we have a lot more than most municipalities do. There are some other communities around South Carolina that do have large fund balances as well. Isle of Palms actually has a fund balance just about the same of ours. Total aggregate fund, reserve funds of about $50 million. The difference is, in Isle of Palms' case, I mean, they're a larger community. We have a full-time resident population of over 2,000. They're over 6,000. They have double the overall budget we do. Plus, they have to routinely undertake beach renourishment projects. So they're constantly using those reserve funds and having to replenish them, in many cases from state grants, in order to maintain their beach. But the question is, this $50 million, what is it there for? The idea in the past, the council had always been very conservative, was there for a rainy day. Well, okay, what does that rainy day mean? So part of this exercise of going through the reserve study, and like I said, we'll be releasing this report to the public. The firm has identified the replacement cost of all the town's assets at about $35 million. This building, the bridge, the roads, vehicles, equipment, stuff like that. So do we need, I mean, we have more than enough to cover that, but do we actually really need the $35 million? That's if everything was flattened and wiped out. Well, the fact of the matter is that $35 million, 16 of it is this building. This building is fully insured at replacement cost. So we don't really need to have 16 million set aside to finance this building just in case it's lost because of hurricane, fire, flood, what have you, because it's insured. Same thing with the bridge. The bridge is insured, the municipal complex is insured. We have insurance on a lot of this other equipment. So what other potential claims on that $50 million? Beach renourishment projects. Other municipalities have to spend millions of dollars on beach renourishment, and they do that either annually or on a periodic basis. We're extraordinarily fortunate here on Kiawah Island that most of our beach is generally accreting. So we haven't had to undertake major beach renourishment projects. May need to look at some things mid-island. There's some areas along Eugenia, and there'll be some images we'll show where that at long term is more stable to erosional. But right now we don't have to spend a lot. The most we've ever spent on a beach renourishment project is less than $1 million. What if we have a major hurricane come through and we have to do a lot of storm cleanup? Well, the most costly storm cleanup we've ever had is less than $1 million. So again, got a lot of money there. What are we going to use it for? It's on my own personal view, and one of the things we'll talk about, and whether my fellow council members agree or not, is strategically investing that money in order to preserve and protect what we value most around here. And that's going to be some issues related to conservation. Maybe it's improving our road infrastructure, raising the road to deal with nuisance flooding over time with sea level rise. It may relate to something like the Municipal Center addition, the Civic and Cultural Center addition, or maybe new amenities. Bottom line is, just to have that money sit there and grow interest doesn't really benefit the community now. And we have more than enough for the proverbial rainy day. So next slide. So what I discussed last year is kind of my priorities were three things: community connectivity and conservation. And the community was part of providing more gathering spaces. That's a little bit about what the Civic and Cultural Center is about. Connectivity is something we'll be working on going forward, potentially extending the leisure trail over here to the Municipal Center complex, creating a trail system here. Ideally, having a multi-use trail that would connect up with the Conservancy's work that they're doing across Betsy Carson, just up the road, where they're going to have a new kind of learning center there. They're going to have nature trails, et cetera. Conservation, we're going to talk about this in some depth, and I'll touch on it a little bit with some slides. My view has been that our interests are not limited to Kiawah Island. I mean, the town itself is not just Kiawah Island. It's Kiawah Island. The town itself is on Kiawah Island, it's on Seabrook Island, and it's on Johns Island. But apart from the physical parameters of the town, the municipal boundaries, our life is dramatically impacted or goes on around us, and particularly on Johns Island. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but I want to acknowledge somebody who just arrived, who can certainly answer questions better than anybody else can about that. Council member Jim McBride, who's been a strong partner on issues. Jim is a council member on the Charleston City Council. Charleston City Council, you ask? Well, he actually covers Johns Island, Charleston County's portion of Johns Island, as well as some of James Island. I'm not sure many people really appreciate that now 20% of Johns Island is within the city of Charleston. That's what Jim's responsible for, and that's almost all of, or is all of, Maybank, from the Stono River over to Main Road, and a nice kind of wedge around that, and it's been growing over time. Jim has done extraordinary work. He gave a presentation to the Charleston City Council a couple of months ago. I think they let you go 10, 15, or 20 minutes beyond the usual limit. I commend it to your attention, going into great detail, explaining the predicate of the traffic congestion and roads and amenities infrastructure challenges that exist on Johns Island. Long story short, a lot of it pertains to the fact that almost every major road on Johns Island is owned by the South Carolina Department of Transportation, not controlled by the county, not controlled by the municipality, and for a variety of reasons, he's got extraordinary visuals that we're going to share next week, and he can answer questions about this if you have them at the end. The state simply has too many roads to maintain. And that's one reason why the town just acquired from the state last week a little stretch of Betsy Carson Parkway going up to Resurrection Road, which is contiguous or adjacent to the town's municipal boundaries, so that we can better maintain that road than the state is able to do so. And we're going to have conversations working with the county and others about what can we do collectively as a community with regard to the rest of Betsy Carson, Bohicket, Main, and River Road. But that's got to be working with folks like the new County Council Chairman Joe Boykin, who represents Johns Island, Jim McBride, and other leaders in the community to try to address these issues. But it's not just, I mean, the way I look at Kiawah Island's zone of interest is how I defined it last year, and I continue to believe this, is by kind of the Kiawah River watershed. And that expands basically about mid-Johns Island. And that's from a conservation standpoint, that's from a traffic management and congestion standpoint. And one thing I want to try to emphasize is that any development that occurs on Johns Island has environmental impacts here on Kiawah Island. It impacts the health and vitality of our marshes, the quality of the water in the Kiawah River and the estuaries. I showed last year shellfish restrictions that exist because of fecal coliform runoff because of development on Johns Island. The Conservancy is doing a lot of research work in that regard, and we want to continue to partner with them. And so we're going to have Lee Bundrick next week at the Conservancy talk a little bit about the research work they're doing, looking at issues related to the Kiawah River watershed. It's also critical habitat for many of our species here. My view is, and we should think about utilizing some of that $50 million referred to help participate in conservation programs within the Kiawah River watershed. If you believe in the environmental impacts, then less development means less pollution, less negative impact on this agrarian rural area of Johns Island, less runoff into our rivers. But if you don't get excited about environment, what's the number one issue most people are concerned about around here? It's traffic and congestion. And Jim can give you specific examples for every one of these developments when we drive up Bohicket or Maine and see all the infill projects, new development. Every time you can conserve one of those properties, that means less future cars on the road, less need for infrastructure build out. So if for no other reason than lessening the future traffic congestion problems coming onto Kiawah Island, let's help the entire community preserve and protect a lot of Johns Island. A little less than 10% of Johns Island is preserved right now. That's dramatically less than the rest of Charleston County, dramatically less than the amount on Wadmalaw right now. I think collectively we can do better than that. So a couple of, so I want to, the last thing I do want to talk about that I didn't have last year was communication. It's not really a strategic priority, but it's a critical need to better engage with the community on all of these issues. The town needs to do a better job. We need to do a better job communicating with our other key stakeholders, whether it's KICA, whether it's the resort, whether it's Kiawah Partners Interests, the club, et cetera. We need to figure out a better way to make sure that we're getting critical information to the community as a whole. One of the challenges the town faces is when we send our weekly e-blast, you have to opt into that. Not everybody does. We get a lot of chatter on IKEA or social media. One of the things we'll look at, people ask kind of an obvious question on IKEA sometimes, starts getting a lot of response, and guys, we actually sent out that in our e-blast this last week. Meredith, who heads up the Communications and Public Affairs Department, what we'll look at, and want to be judicious in this regard, is actually chiming in on IKEA occasionally, not to engage in a back and forth, but if there's something that's clearly, we've clearly communicated what the answer is, who to communicate or something that's been done, or to say, we actually addressed this in our last communication, please click here. Maybe that will encourage people to sign up for the town's e-blast. But we also want to have these ongoing communications with our regional stakeholders. Jim and I were yesterday participating in the Johns Island Task Force meeting, which is a lot of stakeholders in the area. Joe Boykin was there, the new county council chair. Then he and I were over in Mount Pleasant meeting with the Charleston Visitors Bureau and a lot of the other regional stakeholders in a wide range of issues. Got a chance to catch up with Seabrook Mayor Bruce Kleinman at that time as well. We have to think about better advocacy externally, not just talking amongst ourselves, if we're going to address some of these broader regional challenges. So I just want to show now a couple of slides to drive home a couple of these points that I've made. So I keep hearing people say, we're at the end stage of development on Kiawah Island. Not really. We're in the later stages of development. But I don't think people really appreciate that we have the potential for, or not potential, a likelihood of about a 20% increase in dwelling units on Kiawah Island from where we are today. So you think about all the traffic issues, not just the residents and visitors here, but we have 2,000 between 6:45 a.m. and 10 a.m. on average every day. We have more than 2,000 vehicles coming onto the island. Now, 6:45, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., those aren't residents coming down Kiawah Island Parkway. Those are all employees, contractors, and service providers each and every day. Tom, you have how many employees? 600 employees. They don't all come at the same time. You have different shifts, but that's part of those shifts coming in. The resort has probably more than 2x the number of employees of the club. And so that's going to continue to persist and will increase over time. So how do we manage for that? But this just shows you, and we'll go through the rest of the island, this is Freshfields Village itself. The blue areas are those that are not yet developed, that could potentially be developed, commercial and or residential developed just on Freshfields Village. Now, I would also note that, by the way, everything you see around to the bottom, everything is in unincorporated Charleston County. It's zoned R4. It's owned by the resort or its affiliated entities, the Goodwin family, Riverstone, etc. But all of that is zoned R4. 400 or 500 acres. Under current zoning, Charleston County could be another 2,000 homes. Now, no current plans for that, but also you have no idea whether, in fact, the Goodwin family will hold on to that property, or if there are changes in the family dynamics, etc., they'll ultimately sell that. But just look at Freshfields Village now within the town. Those blue areas are still to be developed. Now let's go across the island. Purple and red are all areas that are to be developed. Go further across the island. East End. East End, all purple, still to be developed. Lot more than I think people really understand or appreciate. About 300 individual single-family parcels remaining to be developed. You've got several commercial areas. Most of those are resort properties. The partners, Kiawah Partners, Upper Beach Walk are still being developed. The bottom line is there's still a lot of development, so we're still going to be having a fair amount of contractors, service providers, and others coming on this island for a period of time, and that's likely to continue to increase. It's going to be somewhat cumulative. Next set of slides. So one of the things, and I'll tie into this some images right after this, that we've been looking at from the beachfront overlay standpoint, the Planning Commission has been looking at, and the council's been considering, is the loss of habitat over the course of the last decade. A maritime forest, which is critical to our species' survivability. So this is just one slice of the West End. I mean, before and after, I know you can toggle back and forth. All maritime forest. This was just, what, 6, 7 years ago, Neil? I can't remember when you pulled that up. And by the way, up above the Cape, back up, no, we're not there yet. The next one. No, the showing development. The one, the West End that's showing it developed now, Neil. Okay. That doesn't even account for the fact that now you see that area above the Cape and the timbers was staging area that you see where the trees have been removed, was just staging area for the Cape. That's not an updated image. Now all of those additional pines in that area have been removed. So you see before you had maritime forest along the ocean front. Here, at least along this stretch, you do not. But is this unique to here? We can go to the next slide. So this is just one little slice of Eugenia. Is this the 2015 image? Yes. Okay, just now go to 2025. You want to show them how to toggle. Well, what the image, the 2025 image, would show you is two things. You see the property line there. That's 2015. 2025, a lot of that vegetation below the property line, seaward of the property line, is no longer there now. So you've had some erosion up to the property line, and many of these properties, those were homes that existed in 2015, have been torn down in redevelopment. And what's occurred with the redevelopment is this is it. You'll see a lot of the erosion, of elimination of the vegetation seaward, and the new homes that have been built are larger and now closer to the ocean. So you have a combination of the homes moving closer to the dune line and the dune line eroding. So again, a stretch where you used to have a lot more habitat and vegetative protection along the ocean front. This is just one little stretch of Eugenia. It's not unique to Eugenia. But that's one of the issues that's kind of animating conversations about how do we respond to this. The horse is out of the barn with a lot of this, but not all of it. And how do we manage redevelopment, and development has not yet occurred all along our shoreline. And why is all of this important? That's why I want to go to these last couple of slides. Do this one and the next one, and then we'll come back to this one, Neil. So what you see here are migrating shorebirds, strand-feeding dolphins, and loggerhead sea turtles and bobcats. So I talked to Jim Jordan about this, and I pulled up did an AI query about how many places in the world have the combination of these four species. Not quite, maybe not zero, but AI says the only place in the world where these four species coexist is the coastal region of South Carolina and Georgia, the Barrier Islands, with Kiawah Island as the prime example. We are stewards of an extraordinary place. And development, whether it's simply eliminating habitat, it is one issue. Lighting on the beach, impacting loggerhead sea turtles and other things that we need to be concerned about. What we've seen, and listen, I'm not trying to draw causation here. At best, it's correlation, not necessarily causation. But we have seen, while there had been about a 20-year increase in loggerhead turtles nesting, and maybe this is cyclical, the last several years, there's been a decline. We only had about fewer than 200 nests last year. It had been 300 or 400 the prior couple of years. And what do we find? We've had a lot more development along the beachfront, and beachfront moving closer. What is the second leading code violation in the town from evening code enforcement? Flashlights on the beach after beach chairs at short-term rental properties. You tell me which one you think is more important. Maybe people disagree. Bobcats, we're all familiar with the issues with regard to our bobcats, but I want to go back to an article when the National Wildlife Federation in 2014 certified Kiawah Island as a, whatever its designation is, some national wildlife certified community. But I'm quoting from Jim Jordan at that time, back in 2014. The extensive maritime forest that lies just behind Kiawah's oceanfront dunes offers bobcats the cover they need to hunt and prey and raise young. the issue is a lot of that's disappearing. Then you throw on top of that the introduction of SGAs. And this is an issue that Council Member Kay is the leading the community on right now, working with KICA, the rodenticide companies, pesticide companies, and others to try to change the trend line, because we've seen increasing levels of SGAs impacting our bobcat population. You know, the other, I'm not sure what we have in the next two. You know, the strand feeding dolphins, you know, I don't think they're facing quite the same pressures, although we do have people that sometimes get up too close. There have been questions raised about an inlet relocation and what impact it might have on dolphins. Shorebirds, this is one of the primary stopping over places along a 17,000-mile flyway from the tip of South America all the way up to the tundra in Canada. And we've had significant population decline. Again, it's not just because of development here. There's a whole host of factors. But are we doing enough ourselves to be stewards of this place to protect all these species? So that's just the context of why all this, in my view, is important and why we all need to collectively work together to try to address these challenges going forward. And with that, I'm going to open it up to whatever you want to talk about, whatever questions you may have. Anyone? And there's also, by the way, questions online. Yes, sir?
What facilities do we have, or are we planning on building for our community, other than conservation and beach enrichment facilities?
Well, the town only can only provide a partial answer to that because the town doesn't own much property. The only property the town owns is this 20 acres around here, as well as 3 miles of road. That's basically it. So we don't have a lot of public land for the town to build facilities. We're trying to better take advantage of this municipal center complex to add facilities, and that's why we're adding the Civic and Cultural Center here, which will be a gathering space for arts and cultural events. It'll have community meeting rooms, so there will be better utilization of this property. We'll try to build in some new trails, you know, see if we can work out something with the Conservancy to provide better connection to the things that they're doing. You know, KICA has their own amenities committee. They're facing the same constraint in some respects as well. Maybe we have less of a financial constraint than KICA might, but KICA doesn't have land as well. So the question is, how do we think about, you know, those issues going forward? There's already stress on our existing amenities. I mean, KICA's expanding the sandcastle a little bit. We're doing this, but people complain that amenities and restaurants are already crowded. If we increase the number of dwelling units by 20%, or there's more build out in this area that's coming down this way, you know, what is the impact going to be going forward? I don't have a ready answer yet. The question is, should we be thinking strategically about using our balance sheet to begin to address some of those issues? And it's not just amenities. You know, one of the signal challenges that we face is that we've got not only an aging population in some respects, we've got a lot of aging housing stock. And that's particularly true with multifamily properties and some of the stuff on the West End. And given the ownership structure, the dispersed ownership structure of those, how do you incent people to appropriately invest in upgrading the housing stock? You know, nobody wants to get hit with a large assessment just to put on a new roof. Can the town use its balance sheet to potentially provide low-cost financing for multifamily regimes, for example, so as to avoid them having to have special assessments? You simply build in low interest costs, maybe no interest costs, into their regular assessments. So there's a modest increase in the regular assessments where they can put in new storm windows, they can put in new roofs, they can put in new HVAC, et cetera.
Would you consider the land around fresh fields that you showed a moment ago to be so locked up by the owners that are physically owners
Well, I think it's a worthy conversation to have, whether it is with, whether any existing property owner wants to voluntarily or volitionally contribute to solving some of those challenges. I mean, give Kiawah Partners credit. They contributed the land that enabled us to have the MESC facility here. That could have been developed in another way. Are there other opportunities like that? Same thing with the resort. The resort has most of the undeveloped land on the island. One of the things the council talked about last year is whether it's a new development agreement or a property owner requesting a planned development, that we should look at those as opportunities to have conversations about whether what they're looking, which will benefit their business interest, can be done in a way that also adds community value. And maybe some of that would involve amenities. Thank you.
Brad, and you and I have talked about this before, and I know you've mentioned this several times over the past year. Captain Sam's spit is an issue, and I recognize that you're in mediation, so there are limitations on what you can talk about. But I think I've got everybody's attention recently was the proposed permit by Seabrook to move the river again for the third time. Third time's the charm, I don't know. Fourth time, that's right.
I think it'd be the fourth time.
It'll be the fourth time. And I know you know that I commented on that permit. And one of the issues I had was raising the regulatory structure about the requirement for the Corps. Who owns the land that you're going to impact, that you're permitting? And what effects this may have. You showed that beautiful picture of strand feeding. I saw it was a 5-year look at that. It hasn't changed. But the last time they did this was 8 years ago. So what are we doing, and what can you say about Captain Sam's and where things stand?
Well, let me provide the community assurance on one thing. There is nothing that can be done with regard to an inlet relocation that does not involve town approval. So I want to be crystal clear on this in this regard. There was a permit application before the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Any work in a navigable, U.S. navigable waterway would require the approval of the Army Corps of Engineers. That's necessary. It is not sufficient. It doesn't matter if the Army Corps permits it. At the end of the day, the town has to approve it. The second thing I want to emphasize is the town will undertake a very extensive fact-finding process. If there is an application actually received by the town to do town work within the town's municipal boundaries. And I talked about the beach management ordinance that we passed earlier. There's a provision in there that says no alteration of dunes unless permitted by the town. There's another provision in there that says no alteration of shorelines or inlet relocation unless approved by the town. Those statutory provisions did not exist previously. They do exist now. So that's part of the reason we put those in place. I would hope people would kind of take a deep breath on these issues and not jump to conclusions. I haven't begun to form a view because I don't have the information set right now to be able to do so as to whether an inlet relocation, whether where proposed by SAPO or somewhere else, would be net beneficial or not. What I can say is an objective fact is this town either ceded to or approved it at least 3 times previously and must have come to the conclusion that it was net beneficial. Was that right or wrong decision? Whether the decision was made on, with all the relevant facts and information, I don't know. But there will be a robust process that this town administration, this town council, and all their other relevant committees, the Environmental Committee, Resiliency Committee, Planning Committee, would undertake long before it'd be approved. The one thing I want to be a little bit careful about is some people are saying deny the U.S. Army Corps, our U.S. Army Corps should deny the permit. that removes optionality, in my view. Because it may be the case, may not, but it may be the case that after all this work that's been done, we would conclude this is a good thing for the overall ecosystem. But if the Corps has already denied it, it doesn't matter. We can't proceed with it ourselves. So to be continued. I suspect, I think Stephanie had a conversation just to better understand kind of where the Corps was on this, and they were not aware of some information like the pending lawsuit, because at the end of the day, not only do you have to have town approval, you have to have the approval of the property owner. And the property ownership issue is under litigation right now, and I can't talk a lot more about that. But there's a lot of moving parts. There is nothing imminent, and again, nothing will happen at all with regard to Sam Spit Inlet relocation without the town's considered input and approval. Thank you, Phil.
At a previous meeting, I was thrilled to hear that there was consideration about a bike trail to be able to connect us safely to get, beyond the circle, maybe even bike here. Is that still in the planning?
Certainly under early stages planning. We'll talk about that at the strategic planning meeting next week. The Infrastructure and Public Works Committee and the staff are kind of looking at preliminary options for extending the leisure trail here to the Municipal Center complex, then whether we would have a leisure trail both continue up Betsy Carrison Parkway. Had conversations with county council leaders, particularly Joe Boykin, who I think is very supportive of the idea of multi-use paths. And can you imagine kind of the benefit if there was a multi-use path that connected to Kiawah River Estates, Kiawah River, even the new South Market Station, connected across the road to what the Conservancy is developing. And so we're going to take a look at all of that. Our acquisition of this little stretch of roadway helps facilitate that in small part, but beyond our municipal boundaries would require the cooperation of multiple stakeholders. Thank you. Yes, Carol.
I think it's not on.
It's on online.
Okay.
It's for the online, yeah.
All right. Well, you talked about the decline of the turtle nesting, and my question is, you've been working on this contract with the businesses on the island as far as the amount of junk they're allowed to leave on the beach all the time. Can you explain what the timeline is for that, and could we see relief in that, having less junk left on the beach every night?
So that's been a collective enterprise, a discussion amongst kind of all the key stakeholders. So we have beach operations agreements with Island Beach Services, with Kiawah Island Club, with the resort, and Timbers. I'm not sure, do we have one yet with Timbers, or we need one? We need one. But they all come up, I think the expiration is this March. And the issue is, what does the community collectively really want to occur on the beach? One end of the spectrum, it's nothing. Literally, you don't keep anything on the beach. Probably not practical. I don't think that would actually have widespread community support to have nothing on the beach, but there are some that would probably express that view. The other is, let's have even more opportunities. We keep getting offers in treaties to provide additional beach services, these like high-end concierge services, and they want to be able to store stuff on the beach or bring stuff on the beach. I think where the working group that was established that involved Kika, involved the resort, it involved the club and a couple of other stakeholders, the ARB has been part of that process, was to say, kind of let's, the status quo where we are and the amount of material that's on the beach now and stored on the beach is probably about right. Let's not add to that, but let's make sure that what is there is better maintained, that there's a consistent style, for example, storage boxes, and there's going to be, actually, will circulate in any beach operations agreement that has storage, will actually specify what the storage boxes need to look like, what color they're going to be painted, et cetera. So that we want to manage the amount of stuff on the beach, but also make sure that whatever is there is aesthetically pleasing as possible. David, you have a question?
There you go, Dave.
With respect to South Market, has the town and/or you had any direct communications with the developer? Updates on what they're actually-
I have not had any, and probably should have, because I think the Darbys have been involved in leading that project. They've advertised it as they're the predecessor developers of Freshfields Village, and it's going to be very similar to that. There was a recent YouTube update put out by one of the marketing folks there that said, you know, hurry up, we're signing leases, but there was no information on, as to what those leases, who they've leased with. What I can tell you is there are going to be about 80 townhouses there, and then the rest of it's going to be a mix of office and commercial and retail. There is not going to be, a lot of people ask, there's going to be a big grocery store up there. That's not part of the project, as far as I know. And if you look at the models they have, they're all fairly modestly scaled commercial or retail units. But David, I don't have, and I should. I do want to reach out to them if they would be a partner on this kind of idea of taking care of Betsy Carrison Parkway, enhancing safety and beauty, multi-use trail. I'm sure they would welcome something like that.
As part of that, it would make sense between Keel River Estates, Keel River, and that development to have a trail on this side of the road with crossing
Yep.
people on the other side.
Well, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. I don't think he would mind, because I meet regularly with a lot of key stakeholders, and particularly Roger Warren on a wide range of issues. The plan of the resort is to, it's not going to happen imminently, is to add another golf course, in addition, a new clubhouse at Oak Point. But they've also acquired additional land around there, and their goal ideally would be to provide some workforce housing. And he would be very interested in having easier connectivity, and he would be fully supportive. He's indicated he's fully supportive of the concept of a multi-use trail going up along Betsy Carrison Parkway, as well as just better care and feeding of Betsy Carrison Parkway. The median is just not well cared for. Trees fall over all the time, limbs fall over. We need to be doing the same thing along there that we've been doing on Kiawah Island Parkway and Beachwalker Drive. Yes, Sherry.
Status of the town sanctioning use of Sandy Beach up on the north section of the island? Thank you.
Sandy Point.
So your question was with regard to Sandy Point, and there have been at least weekend, widespread weekend utilization of Sandy Point. My understanding going back many, many years, if not decades.
Sanctioned or unsanctioned?
Well, we do, the town did grant a beach operations agreement to one entity, Coastal Expeditions. So they're the only licensed provider, and that operations agreement is subject to a number of restrictions and conditions, and as far as we've been able to ascertain, they've fully lived up to that. We will certainly look at the potential for better, at least monitoring of activity there, both through drones as well as, I don't know if you've seen it out and about, a town boat that can be utilized by both code enforcement, beach patrol, our Wildlife and Natural Resources Department, in order to be able to monitor places like that. It's my own personal view, Sherry, is all I can say is, to try to say after 4 or 5 decades of people utilizing Sandy Point, sorry, you're no longer welcome. I just don't think is practical, and it's tough to get over there. It's really tough to enforce. The hope is that we can just make sure that all those who enjoy Sandy Point do so in as respectful a fashion as possible.
The one company that has been sanctioned, what in general will they be doing?
Part of what their mission is all about is eco-tours. And so part of the obligation on their part is to educate and to make sure that they're picking up trash and not leaving any equipment on the beach, no parties, no bonfires, a whole host of things. I can't remember what all is in our beach operations agreement, but it's a number of conditions like that. And what we want to do is establish a model. If you're being, and Chris Crowley, who I think wasn't Chris just, Awanda was just elected mayor of Awanda, so he's a strident conservationist. So I actually need to follow up with Chris and congratulate him. Realized I hadn't done that, that would be a model, and he actually wanted to use that as a competitive advantage to say we're the only licensed provider on Kiawah Island and Sandy Point Beach, and here's what we're all about. Any other questions? So Jim, can I, impose on you just to, spend just a couple of minutes talking about some of the work you've done? So one of the things that's, got to concern all of us, whether it's emergency evacuation or just being able to get into Charleston for dinner or a show or anything else, is, there are only two ways off the island. And really, one of the ways off the island isn't really off the island, it's onto another island. And so there are challenges with both. I think you've discovered that the River Maybank intersection is like the worst or most congested in the entire Charleston area. And it doesn't even get an F, it's something well below that. But what kind of you've looked at and what you are proposing to try to do that from the city standpoint?
I just want to reiterate, thanks for a great presentation. I'm happy to be here, honored to be here, and honored to work with you, Mayor Belt. I want to reiterate one thing you said is the biggest thing that I learned. I've been on city council for just 2 years. Most people don't know it's more of a problem on James Island, the peninsula, but a little bit on Johns Island, how many state roads there are. And the mayor brought this up briefly. We have the fourth most miles of state roads in the country, yet we're the 32nd size in population. And the state has admitted, so everything I know is being recorded, it's being broadcast, I'm not going to say anything that hasn't been admitted by SCDOT themselves and the state themselves. They've admitted they don't have the money to improve the roads. What I mean by improve versus maintain, they do a pretty good job, in my opinion, maintaining. They barely have enough money to pave the roads they own. But to improve them with the population, they don't have the money to do it. So they've prioritized, Justin Powell, I think is SCDOT chairman, has prioritized major bridges and interstates, because that's all the money they have in addition to the paving. So that's why these counties started with Charleston County in 2004, started the transportation sales tax, which makes a lot more sense if you start with the state doesn't have the money, and if they're state roads, they're not going to improve them. If you understand, if you start with that and then you go to, that's why Charleston County and other counties have done this transportation sales tax. It's not because the county's not managing their funds well, it's because they're trying to make up for what the state's not doing. On Johns Island, and the mayor is going to present some slides that I presented to City Council, Charleston City Council, on November 12th. That I'm trying to break the mold a little bit of just focusing on the city, the 20% city portion of Johns Island, to recognizing that whatever we do right or wrong and have done right or wrong, a lot of wrong in the last 20 years in the city portion of Johns Island is affecting all of the Sea Islands. And I'm trying to change that perspective so we recognize that more instead of just kind of being stovepiped and looking at the city of Charleston. And I
don't want to get into it, but I presented some ideas to help with that. Most of the zoning in the city portion of Johns Island was for the most part set in stone in the early 90s. And just like some of the things you put on your slide for Kiawah, like they have vested rights, they can build when they want to build. It's their land, it's zoned for how it's zoned, and there's not much we can do at the city level to stop it or slow it down. Not that we even want to, because I'm a big believer in property rights, of course. But because, what happens is, the way I've interpreted and made sense in my mind is, any mayor in the state, because of the state road issue, is in a tough situation because, every 10 years there's a comprehensive plan at the county level and the municipal level of zoning and how things are expected to be over the next 10 years. And all you can do is zone for what you think makes sense and then hope the state will come in and improve the roads along the way. And they don't. And that's how we've gotten into the situation we're in now, where a lot of land has been zoned, and it's what I call owned and zoned for a purpose, and we can't go back and stop people from building. So we're trying, I proposed some things about to bring up a thing called a municipal improvement district. I don't know if it'll happen or not, which is money that as building happens in the future, there'd be like a kind of an impact fee that comes towards improvements on Johns Island with some infrastructure. But so much of Johns Island's been built out already. We're not sure if it's going to bring in enough money, so we're not sure yet if that's worth it or not.
Jim, just a couple comments. The one thing, finally, it looks like it's moving forward between the city and the county is getting the funding, final $7.5 million for the second lane.
I don't know how I forgot to bring this up. Thank you.
off
Yes.
of Johns Island and across the Stono River. They've got to squeeze the lanes down a little bit to avoid taking a couple of grand trees out. But one thing, talking about this $50 million pot we have, it was in the back of my head is the county and city were struggling to come up with this $7.5 million. I kind of want to say, we'll lend you the money. Can you make this happen a year ago? Because they had to keep waiting around until Mark Clark funds were kind of released. There was an audit, and so.
I didn't know to ask for the money. I would have asked. I didn't know you were offering.
$1 million. And my guess is a lot of people here like to go into Charleston and might have said that's actually a pretty good use of our money if we can relieve our rather being an hour and a half commute, it's back to 25, 30 minutes. That would be a good use.
That's why this collaboration is so important. We've got to communicate, and we are communicating really well with Joe Boykin, Jenny Honeycutt, you and me. We've got to keep that up.
Well, you did raise an issue that I didn't talk about, and I think I don't know if Stephanie, if you saw it today, I believe the county kind of released the first high-level plan with regard to the TST funds. So I don't know if you all have paid attention to this, but it's the transportation sales tax, and it's the only source of revenue, at least what the county is saying, in order to support roads projects and infrastructure projects in the future. The county probably has been bending over backwards, trying to reach out to all stakeholders, municipalities, others, in order to get support for this transportation sales tax, because the last referendum did not go well. And there was a lot of probably skepticism of the county stewardship of funds previously, all the emphasis on Mark Clark and not of these other projects. And so they're bending over backwards. What we're trying to work through with the county is if there's going to be a referendum, it'd be pretty specific as to how that money would be used and over what time frame. How much would go for but one of the issues was, for example, should a significant percentage of it, which conservation groups, Johns Island Task Force are supporting, is to Greenbelt, the county Greenbelt Fund, in order to be able to use, it's going to be $4 billion, a billion of that, do I have my numbers right there? I think over time, to actually conservation easements or conservation acquisitions. Again, to take properties off the market so they're not developed, so you won't need as much investment in roads. But the one thing I would perhaps respectfully disagree a little bit with, Jim, is that SCDOT does, the maintenance aspect of their work. They have, like you said, the fourth most roads they manage in the country, a miles network. The sales tax, which you kind of all benefit from, we have fairly low cost of gasoline here, it's because we have a lower gasoline tax here in South Carolina than most jurisdictions do. Combination of lower gasoline tax, a lot more road miles to take care of means they're not taken care of as well. One of the reasons we took care, we acquired this one from the state and they were happy to hand it off to us, is because we've requested them on many occasions to do some work. They just don't step up to the plate very quickly, if at all. If anybody has been drives along Bohicket, about half a mile, quarter mile past Ace on the right as you're going out, there's a couple of cones there. I don't know if you noticed that. I've gotten out of my Jeep and gotten out and taken pictures. It's completely washed out right to the pavement edge and underneath. I mean, that is a substantial hazard. We put in a work request. Okay. Anyway, but it's been a pleasure to work with folks like Jim McBride. I've got to say, I give a lot of credit to my fellow council members for how hard they work. Nobody works, I don't mean to diss them in any way, than Jim McBride. If you just see how much he puts out, his YouTube videos, all his data and analysis, I don't know where you get all this from. We can all kind of benefit from the good work you're doing on behalf of Johns Island.
I appreciate that. Just one thing really quick. He brought it up, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, but the county council, Charleston County Council, tonight is voting on the funding for that extra lane on Maybank from River Road to the Stone River Bridge that funnels down one lane to get it to 2 lanes. The money's only available because the 520, basically the defunct 526 didn't happen last time. They sold rights away and that kind of stuff, as well as there was a cost savings on another project that they're able to bring into this. That's the only reason the money's even available, because even this project wouldn't be able to be done without a sales tax. So thanks to Joe Boykin, Ginny Honeycutt, they're bringing that to the Finance Committee tonight, so it'll probably pass. Joe thinks he has the votes for it. It's an $8 million project just to widen that one short stretch of lane. But if that passes tonight, then they got to go through the regular Charleston County Council, I think in a couple weeks or whatever, and vote for it again. But and with the permitting process, it takes forever. We're anticipating 2028 when it'll finally be built. If nothing else, I tell the truth. It's not always good news, but it's good news. At least it's funded and it's going to happen. So that's it.
Anything online, Meredith?
Yes, sir.
I know. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much for joining us.